Paul Lynde, who was a Hollywood square and was a regular on the Donnie Marie show, had a gigantic deal at ABC, and he had done a sitcom called The Paul Lynde Show that had one of the biggest opening numbers ever. I mean, rating. It was a huge rating the first week. People hated it. The second week, the rating, it was like a big old atom bomb. And that was probably because Paul was best taken as a flavor in a recipe. You'd bring Paul in, he would do one line, and kill with that one line, and leave. He was not the central character in a show. And they tried a second time after that with a show called Temperatures Rising, and they put him in as the star and called it The New Temperatures Rising. And again, it didn't work. So Paul had to suffer as a multimillionaire utility player. And one of the things they gave him to make him happy was his own special. But because it was Paul, it just couldn't be the Paul Lynde Show because that was too nonspecific. But marrying Paul Lynde to Halloween was a Fred Silverman idea. He had at that point left CBS and gone to ABC. And he thought those two elements worked well because there's something essentially witchy about Paul Lynde. And he was. We dressed him up as a witch. That was the ad campaign. And we created this world in which we hired famous witches to play his sisters. He was part of a family of witches. And Margaret Hamilton was one of the witches, and Billy Hayes was Witchy Pooh, which was from a Sid and Marty Krofft series, and he was going to visit them, and we loaded it up with guest stars. Tim Conway, who was huge off the Carol Burnett show, Roz Kelly, who played a character on Happy Days called Pinky Tuscadero, which was Fonzie's girlfriend, if you are a Happy Days aficionado, before the shark jumped. She was on it. And Florence Henderson, of course, because she was the star of the Brady Bunch, and she was a big ABC star. And I forget who else we had on it. We probably had somebody I'm leaving out.
Betty White.
Was Betty on it?
Yeah.
Betty White was on it? Oh, Betty White was on it, yeah. I remember Kiss was on it. And that was, they had never been on television before. I mean, it was a gigantic coup to get them on primetime television. They had done the Midnight Special and Don Kirshner's rock concert, but they had never actually been on a TV show. And of course, the great shocker was, Paul had no idea who they were, but the president of their fan club was Ringo Starr's son. And Paul said, "Ringo has a son, I'm gonna kill myself." I remember we were shooting the thing on the ABC Prospect lot in Los Feliz, and Roots was on while we were shooting, or it had been on, and we were shooting the thing, and it had been on, I think, for the sweeps or something. I forget what the timing was, but LeVar Burton had starred as Kunta Kinte in Roots, and had exploded. I mean, he was the biggest thing, and he was on the lot doing something, and we were outside having a cigarette break because people still smoked in those days. And Paul and I were out there, we're puffing away, and LeVar Burton comes by, and Paul didn't know his name, but had recognized him from the show and wanted him to know that he knew who he was. And he stood, as he walked by, Paul just pointed at him and went, "Roots!" LeVar Burton was, oh, I forgot to mention Paul was in his full witch drag. The hat, the whole thing. We go to the commissary, everybody was dressed as witches, and